All right. I'm coming. Thank you, Terrence, for getting everybody warmed up and thinking about sex. Who wants to take a roll in the hay? Anybody? All right. I promised the organizers of this conference that I was the perfect after-lunch speaker because we're going to talk about getting laid. You guys good with that? All right. So real quick, just a little bit about me. Terrence mentioned my book, Branding is Sex. Get your customer laid and sell the hell out of anything. This is a practical how-to book. It's not just a dirty book. I can assure you there's real practical, very actionable business advice and things that you can do in that book. It really is a how-to book. It's kind of a textbook. My newest book is called Irrational Loyalty, Building a Brand That Thrives in Turbulent Times. Since 2016, we've seen a huge change in marketing and branding overall. President Trump gave us a strategic masterclass in branding, if you remember, and everything in the world of branding has changed. And so this book really talks about how do brands stand out and bond with their customers in deeply emotional ways, even in the most turbulent times. So I recommend both of those books. So I want to start by asking people this question. Which brands inspire irrational loyalty? Raise your hand if you feel like you are irrationally loyal to a brand. I know you are. All right. Adam, what brand are you irrationally loyal to? Trader Joe's. Okay. Anybody here irrationally loyal to their iPhone? Yeah, where are my iPhone people at? Right, where are my Android people at? We get very few people raising their hands. All right, let me tell you a story about irrational brand loyalty. Irrational brand loyalty is that condition in which people are so strongly bonded to your brand that they would feel like they were cheating on it if they were to choose a competitor, right? So quick story, I went to Best Buy when that last Samsung phone product came out, a Galaxy S whatever, and I went to try it out. And I held that thing in my hand, and I turned it around, and it was gleaming, and it was beautiful, and there's sparkles coming off of it. And I knew that functionally it was superior to my iPhone. That it had better memory, it had more durable glass, it was certainly easier to get, it cost less, right? I didn't have to wait in a line with a bunch of iSheep in order to get it the day that it came out on the market, correct? Yet I held that thing in my hand and I saw those green text bubbles and it made me feel sick, right? There is nothing more irrational than feeling like you'd be cheating on a brand if you were to choose an alternative, right? And so that's how we feel about things like our iPhones, like Trader Joe's, almost to the point that you wouldn't shop at a Whole Foods, you wouldn't shop at a Safeway, that you're irrationally loyal to the brand. I happen to know Trader Joe's is a grocery store for people who don't cook, right? Nothing more irrational than that. So I want to tell a little story about a brand that literally killed its customers. First of all, I'm from Austin, Texas. Are there any other Texans in the room? Raise your hands high. All right, you guys know who this is. Have you heard of this brand? Blue Bell Ice Cream. They tried to effing kill us, didn't they? Yes. They had a listeria breakout in their plant in Brenham, Texas. Back in 2010 was the first time. And 3 people got so sick that they literally died. Yet this brand was off the market for about 5 years, and when it came back on the market, I don't know about the rest of you Texans, but my local grocery store, people were lined up out the door, down the street, around the corner, behind velvet stanchions, right? And they were like controlling people going into the grocery store to get their hands on 1/2 gallon of ice cream. Does anybody know what flavor? Vanilla, not listeria flavored, but yes, vanilla. 1/2 gallon of vanilla ice cream. There is nothing more irrational than going back to a brand that literally killed its customers. But the reason they enjoy this condition of irrational loyalty is because the way they behaved through that crisis, right? They showed up with a set of values and beliefs. They used that as an opportunity to reinforce those to their customers. They communicated with the public. They first showed regard for humanity. And they did it in a very active way. They said, we are sorry for what we did that killed people, caused people to be sick, and caused bad things to happen in our communities and in the ice cream loving public. They took full responsibility for that. They communicated with the public over a long period of time during the time that the plant was closed. They shut down all operations for 5 years while they cleaned up this plant. They even continued to employ some of their employees, and they continued to pay them. And so the way they showed up through this, when the brand came back on the market a couple of years later, this idea of irrational loyalty, it played through. That's because They were a brand, a very strong brand. So why are we even talking about this BS right now? You guys have talked about all this stuff over the past couple of days. I sat here this morning, listened to a bunch of conversations that were taking place, but everything from retail as a service, which we had an innovation leader from Macy's talking about that. We have product-free experiential retail now, digitally native retail, the rise of voice, what I call the Amazonification of the world. I actually sell products on Amazon. I sell 2 books on Amazon. And recently, Amazon unilaterally changed the price of one of my products and completely devalued my brand by lowering that price because I can't sell it for its original retail price on any other platform. And so these things are happening in our world, and so we have to be thinking about brand. So I'm not the first person to stand up here and talk to you about brand today, but I'm going to be more tactical and more actionable with you to talk about the how. So what is a brand? Anybody want to guess? You guys should be experts now because there have been several speakers on brand today. Anyone? Oh, come on, don't make me call on you. All right, what is a brand? Okay, you're all straight A students. I'm going to tell you what a brand is. We've heard this time and time again. It's the collective emotional response to your product or service. It's expectations, it's memories, it's a relationship. There is no other aspect of business where we get to use the word love quite like we do when we talk about branding. We don't use the word love, and we certainly don't get people laid through accounting, do we? No, right? Branding, it's about a relationship. We are in relationships with brands. And ultimately, branding is about differentiation, but meaningful differentiation. So today, especially in the retail environment, people are literally paralyzed by choice. I go to my local grocery store and I go down, let's say, the shampoo aisle. You guys been in that aisle in a while? I shop at this gigantic store in Texas. It's called H-E-B. Everything is bigger in Texas. You walk into the aisle. The shampoo aisle goes from this wall to that wall, east to west, floor to ceiling, with every possible hair cleaning, hair fixing thing that you can get. I am literally paralyzed and stand there like this. Everything promises it's going to make my hair softer, it's going to make it thicker, it's going to make it longer, it's going to make it cleaner, it's going to introduce me to a husband, right? These are all of the things that it promises, but none of those things are the thing that stand out to me because they're not meaningfully different. I'm a home cook. I have every possible salad cutting device one could think of. I have a salad shooter, I have a salad spinner, I have 14 different kinds of mandolins, one that's branded Pampered Chef that I can tell you I definitely overpaid for. Yet at the end of the day, the thing that's the most meaningfully different to me is a really effing good chef's knife, right? And so it's not enough to be different. Build a brand for people to use it, not just to sell it. And I think about in the retail environment, a very good example of this. When I think about the cosmetics category, you guys been to a traditional department store lately and tried to buy a lipstick? What happens? You walk in, everything is behind a glass case, isn't it? There are ladies standing there in white lab coats. There is nothing more clinical and nothing more off-putting than talking to somebody about the things you're going to put on your face and not being able to touch them, versus you go to Sephora or you go to Glossier. There are people there wearing holsters with brushes, and there's cleaning things, and they're like, come over here, try this on, let's play, let's experience the brand. That's what I mean about differentiation that's meaningful. Build a brand that people want to use, not just something that people want to buy. So ultimately, a brand is a promise. And here's a couple of examples of brand promises that I really like. Anybody here stay at a Ritz-Carlton resort lately? Does anybody know off the top of their head the Ritz-Carlton brand promise? It's the most perfectly constructed brand promise in the world, and it goes like this. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. If you've stayed at a Ritz-Carlton resort, you've experienced that, right? Quick story. I like to stay at Ritz-Carlton resorts. I usually can't afford them myself. It's when I'm speaking at a conference and the conference puts me up there. Last summer, I had the opportunity to speak at a conference at a Ritz-Carlton resort in Puerto Rico. I brought my best friend from growing up, who is a high school teacher from an inner city school in Denver. She doesn't have a lot of opportunities to stay in a Ritz-Carlton, certainly not for free. And I told her, I said, get this. The brand promise here is we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And you can experience that with every touch point that you have here. She said, I want to test that out. So she took it upon herself for the 3 nights that we were there to call down to the front desk and ask for some kind of obscure item. Every night, the first night, it was a 40-foot extension cord, which happened to be yellow. And then on the 3rd night, she called down and she asked for a nail file, right? Conversation. Hi, this is Miss Schwartz. I'm calling. Can you please send a nail file to my room? Hangs up. A couple minutes later, our phone rings in the room, and it's somebody from the front desk. I need to get a clarification. What language is the primary language they speak in Puerto Rico? Spanish, right? They speak Spanish, they speak English, and the person who was working the front desk happened to be a native Spanish speaker, and he said, I would like to clarify. I'd like to understand. She asked for a nail file. Is that the thing that you use to saw the bars of a jail? And I said, yes, but smaller. And he said, yes, I think I know what you mean. And then 10 minutes later, a housekeeper came to our room with a tray with one of those silver domes, and underneath the dome was not just a nail file, but an entire manicure set, right? Your brand promise is something that anchors the entire experience that people have with your brand. And so I want to point out, since I was picking on Amazon before, sometimes these brands have the promise baked right in the logo. Amazon, it's a platform where you can get anything from A to Z. You see the little arrow right there? It's an anchoring doctrine for your organization. It is the single piece of information that is at the top of your brand mountain that anchors everything you do. And brand is an intangible asset. All this stuff that we're talking about is not embodied entirely in the physical form of the brand, right? You can't really see it, but you can feel it, you can touch it, you can hear it, you can taste it, you can sense it, right? Especially in the retail environment, the brand is very intangible, but you see differentiated brand experiences in front of you all the time. The day after Thanksgiving, I found myself, unfortunately, in Santa Monica, California, by my family, and I happened to go shopping, and most of the stores that day were empty. It was the strangest thing. Yet Lululemon, like people out the door, down the street, around the corner, trying to get into that store. This is an organization that has figured out how to create an intangible asset from the experience of their brand. You don't believe me? It's also a financial asset. Somebody stood up here a couple of hours ago and said that if you have a brand that shows up with purpose and values and beliefs, that you can command anywhere from a 10 to 13% premium for that brand. It is absolutely true. If you don't believe me, I want you to look at this chart. It's not important what the data is on this chart. A million years ago, when I used to have a job, I worked for the company that makes this research called Millward Brown. They're still doing this study. It's called the Brand Z, Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands. This is the top 50 from 2018. If you look up here, there's a bunch of retail brands on there, right? The big takeaway here is in order to be on this list, your brand has to give a certain amount of goodwill and value to the organization and the overall capitalization of the organization. This brand has changed drastically in the last 10 years because we see brands up there that kind of came from behind, dark horse brands that weren't even on this list. But then you see some of the brands on here that are the stalwarts, that are the stewards of branding that have been around since time immemorial. Brands like Coca-Cola, brands like Marlboro. Who the heck still smokes except for Terrence after taking a run at Nike, right? These are brands for which the brand value and the goodwill extended, the memories, the expectations, the values, the beliefs, the connections, the things about the brand that transcend the functional benefits of the brand, keep those brands on the map year after year after year. So ultimately, a brand is a story. I always talk about brand, not brand storytelling, but by creating the story of the brand, which is like the core DNA of the organization. And ultimately, your brand is your story. So this next section here, I'm going to talk a little bit about brain science, and then we're going to get real quickly into the how-tos, because I have only 9 minutes and 14 seconds left. So any armchair brain scientists in this room? Any actual neuroscientists? I just want to make sure, because I completely bastardized this science. All right, 3 parts to the brain. This part of the brain right up here is called the neocortex. The neocortex, the frontal cortex. This is the part of the brain that does things like it processes language. It does math. It calculates, do I have enough money in my pocket here to be able to afford this thing, right? So that's the rational thinking brain. We hope that that brain kicks in when we're making decisions. We hope that that brain kicks in when we're marketing to people. Back here in the brain stem, in the amygdala, and roughly this part of the brain right here, is the reptilian brain. This is what controls automatic response. And automatic response is that fight or flight response. Have you ever been so scared that the hair on the back of your neck stood up or you got goosebumps? That is actually a neurophysiological response that's happening in the body where your body is actually trying to make itself bigger so it can fend off a predator, right? And so those are not the kind of responses that we're trying to enact in people with branding. What we're concerned about in branding is the limbic brain, which is the deep, gooey core of the brain, which handles the feels, right? The limbic system, you have to feel something to be able to do something. And so why is this important? That is because 98% of what your brains are doing right now is happening outside of what you're currently aware of. I have 2% of your brains available to speak to today. The other 98% of what your brain is doing, it's digesting that lunch you just ate. It's growing hair. It's circulating your blood. It's helping you respirate and breathe. It's involved in cell reproduction, right? I only have 2% of your brain available, and 95% of decisions that people make happen outside the neocortex. You don't believe me? Go read the brain science on this. There's a guy from Harvard University called Dr. Antonio Damasio. And Dr. Damasio was doing some research on people who have broken limbic systems. People who have broken limbic systems have lost the ability to feel. And I'm not just talking about my ex-husband here. We're talking about people who are incapable of having emotions. People who are incapable of having emotions, who have broken brains in the limbic system, can't even make the basic decisions of paper or plastic, or what time am I going to go see Dr. Damasio today? Like, he couldn't even make appointments with these people. So people have to feel something to do something, and a brand is the way to do that. So brand or be branded. You have a brand whether you like it or not. It's time to take control of it. Going to give you some tips for doing that yourself. So I talked about the brand promise before. I always like to pick on United Airlines. Who flew here today on United Airlines? Anybody? All right, United Airlines. What is United Airlines' stated brand promise? Does anybody know? It's to be the most caring airline in the world, right? Bullshit. I'm sorry, if you're the most caring airline in the world, do you take that guy, David Dow, and like drag him down the middle of the aisle, right? You draw blood, you knock that guy out. You can see his belly in that picture. Gross, right? That's terrible. If you're the most caring airline in the world, do you put somebody's family pet in an overhead bin and kill it? No, you do not. If you're the most caring airline in the world, do you take somebody's family pet and send it to the wrong destination, which in this case was Japan? Right? No, you do not. Your brand promise is the story of your brand. It is the sum total of all of your beliefs and values, and your brand is a magnet that is designed to attract to it people who share values and beliefs that are similar to the organization behind it. So I want you to start thinking of yourselves as a brand, and I want you to think of that brand as an experience. And so here's how we do it in the last 5 minutes. Anybody a psychology major in college? Couple people? Yeah, in marketing, and I've seen this pyramid a number of times here. In marketing and psychology, we love our pyramids. The reason why the pyramid is important is because you have to satisfy the stuff at the bottom before you can get to the next layer. You can't take this thing and turn it on its end. You can't go straight to self-actualization. You have to meet the basic physiological and safety needs for people, right? People need to make sure that they're going to be well-fed, that they're going to have water, and that when they go to sleep at night, they're not going to get eaten by a bear before they can make major buying decisions, correct? Maslow's hierarchy of needs is all about this idea that we're all on this path to elevate our self-concepts to the point that we feel self-actualized. And the things that we buy, that we eat, that we drink, that we wear, that we drive, the retailers that we shop at, even if you're in a business-to-business realm and you're a business decision maker and you're making a decision, what kind of retail technology are you buying to power your stores and to power your experience is all part of the elevation of your self-concept, making you feel better about yourself and helping you get to that place where you're levitating in nirvana. Well, the same is true of brands. So this, if you're going to take a picture of anything, take a picture of this slide because this is the core of the methodology. In defining brand DNA, we call this the brand values pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid, these are the basic functional benefits of the brand. You guys are all straight A students. Other people have talked about this. The functional benefits, if you're talking about selling a car, These are the things like the wheels, the transmission. It has to have a steering wheel. How many of you are old enough to have purchased a car where power door locks and power windows were not standard equipment? Anybody? First car I bought, I remember that being an extra options package. I also remember sitting in the driver's seat of that Ford Escort on the floor of the Ford dealer and the salesman showing me the vanity mirror and telling me that was an extra $400, but I had to have it, right? You wouldn't even think of buying a car today if it didn't have power door locks and power windows, right? So the functional benefits, the baseline requirements, the ante to get into the game. If you're ice cream, this is milk, cold, and sweet. Right? The ante to get into the game, it doesn't stay the same. It changes as people innovate, as companies innovate, and they start offering things above and beyond those functional benefits. They become standard equipment. So this is like my big soapbox moment here, which is today's options packages are tomorrow's standard equipment. If you are differentiating your brand today on the basis of options packages that other retailers, even if they're not imitating them today, will be imitating them tomorrow, they become standard equipment and therefore expectation for the entire category, right? The last car I bought was in August of 2018, and Bluetooth was a standard feature. The previous car was in 2014, and Bluetooth was an option. You wouldn't even think of buying a Kia today if it didn't have Bluetooth, correct? So today's options packages are tomorrow's standard equipment. In the middle part of the pyramid, these are like the affiliation and esteem needs. Someone else, I think it was Jeff this morning, he presented a similar model here. But this is where people feel like they're part of a group, and this is where people feel trust. Emotional benefits, remember you have to make people feel something to do something. This is where your bells and whistles go, right? It's still imitatable. The emotional benefits of your brand, other people can imitate, and I guarantee you that they will. And when you get to the top of your pyramid, at the very, very top are the things that I call self-expressive benefits, which these are the most important things. The best brands in the world are the ones that crack the code on the top of this brand values pyramid. And how do you get there? It's by doing this. The first thing is figuring out who is the ideal customer, the archetypal best customer for your brand, the customer who is worth the most over the long haul. I work with companies all over the world in every kind of category. This is the area that unlocks the most potential and gives organizations the most focus. Figuring out who is the brand for. Ultimately, your brand needs to be for one person. It's a very controversial area of my business, but it gives you this relentless focus that tells you more about what you're not going to do than it does about what you are going to do. If you have a picture of who this person is, you can power your marketing, you can power your brand to be laser focused on this person. And so how do you figure out who this person is? You ask. You do this exercise, get your leadership and your marketing team together, get a big piece of that butcher paper and lay it out on the floor and have your CEO like trace his body or her body, and then draw this person. What do they look like? What is their day like? If they're somebody who has a lot of money to make purchase decisions, show them standing on a big pile of money. If they're resourceful, give her a big handbag with a Swiss Army knife that has all the tools on it, right? Go through this process of identifying who is this brand for. I guarantee you that the best retailers in the world focus their brand on a singular person. They market to many. They message to many. They sell to many. I'm not Apple's ideal customer. What do they want with a middle-aged woman from Austin, Texas? They don't want anything with me, right? But I buy their products again and again and again because of what I aspire to. So this ideal customer focus is going to give you that laser focus. Then the next thing you do is get to the top of your pyramid. How do you do that? You do that with these 3 questions. If you do nothing else coming out of this talk today, I want you to attempt to answer these 3 questions. The first question being that question about self-expression. What does it say about a person that they use your brand? You don't have to answer this question yourself. Do some research. Go out there, actually ask customers, what does it say about you that you shop in this store? What does it say about you, the head of technology for this retailer who is buying the software? What does it say about you that you buy this brand? What do you know about me if you knew that I showed up here today in a Ford F-150 truck, right? You know something about me from the brands that I use. Go and ask people what they want it to say about them that they use the brand. The second question that you ask and this is the most important and the most difficult to answer, but this speaks to meaningful differentiation, is what is the singular benefit that customers get from you they can't get from anyone else? What is the one thing they get from you that they can't get anywhere else? People always have a choice to do nothing. People can always use your competitor. What is the one thing they get from you they can't get anywhere else? And you have to ask this question again, again, and again, and do the BS test and say, is that true? Is this really defensible? But identifying that, you may not know what it is. Go and ask your customers, what's the one thing you get from us that you can't get anywhere else? I will say that 99 and 44/100% of the time, the answer to this question is not apparent. We don't know what it is, and we don't derive this. We only get this from asking customers. And then finally, this is the sex question. When you think about your customer, when you think about that ideal customer, that one North Star customer that you're aiming your brand at, that person, that woman, that man is trying to create a story for his or her life in which he or she is the protagonist. They're the hero. And in that story, they get to assemble things. They get to pick up tools. They get to shop at retailers. They get to buy stuff. They get to make stuff. They get to wear stuff. It's all part of helping them become the hero in their own story. What is the role that you play in your customer's hero story? I have that twice. Interesting. Okay, so that's all I have. I'm out of time, and then I'll be out of town. The world's shortest keynote. But if you guys want a free chapter of Irrational Loyalty, text me. It's all one word, Deb Gabor. Like, type into your phone right now. Get out your phones. Type into your phone 44222. You're going to get chapter 1 of Irrational Loyalty, building a brand that thrives in turbulent times. And then after that, you're going to receive a couple more emails that are going to have a couple gifts for you in there. One of those things being the ideal customer exercise, which is the how-to, how to do that ideal customer exercise with your team, and then a couple of other bonuses. Okay, so I want to thank you very much for your time. I know this was a speedy session. You guys enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you so much for bringing me here. Talk to you soon.